Hi, what's up? My name is Adam, and you are on Cyber Raccoon channel. Introducing a collection of city planning simulations that allow the player to build and take control of a modern metropolis, medieval settlement, tropical island, and even a Martian colony. City Skylines. To date, according to the reviews of the players, the city building simulator released in 2015 is the best. That is, it is relatively new. The game offers classic city building mechanics, refined to perfection. The player gets the opportunity to literally create the city of his dreams from scratch, and then continue to take care of it and all its inhabitants already in the role of mayor. He will be responsible for the financial and tax system, transport, education, healthcare, emergency services, and much more. Also, in City Skylines, the influence that many constant and random factors have on the city is well implemented: environmental pollution, traffic flow, employment of the population and its level of well-being, sanitary and hygienic conditions, social factor, and so on. All this leads to the constant formation of various unique game situations, which are incredibly interesting to untangle. City Skylines has a built-in system that allows you to easily add your own modifications to it, which will delight modding fans and will allow the game, already rich in content and mechanics, to make it even more diverse. In Anno 2205, events take place in the distant future, where humanity was finally able to begin to develop territories beyond the surface of the Earth. The player will have to take control of a powerful corporation that is engaged in complex scientific research, the extraction of rare and valuable resources, the production of a wide range of very different products and, among other things, develops new territories, in particular, places its own colonies on the moon. However, there are other similar corporations here, waging fierce rivalry among themselves. And the factor of fierce competition will need to be taken into account when making even the smallest decision. Also, local radicals who believe that the Earth's satellite should remain inviolable will interfere with plans to populate the moon. These guys do not even shy away from open aggression and the use of weapons. So from time to time the player will have to take on the duties of a commander, using his own military fleet to eliminate the threat. Dawn of Discovery. Another game from Blue Byte with a more or less story-oriented setting that goes beyond the usual city-building simulators and provides ample opportunities in terms of diplomacy, trade, economics, and also, which is very atypical for the genre, pays a lot of attention to sea travel and battles. Dawn of Discovery has an interesting story mode in which the player will have to travel across the sea, discover new trade routes and unexplored islands, and then colonize them, building and populating them at their discretion. Many of the story missions are related to the already mentioned elements of diplomacy and trade. Finally, there are various military courts here, allowing you to abandon diplomacy and peaceful coexistence and resolve differences with other powers by force. In addition to the story campaign, there is also a multiplayer mode and a free-play mode. Surviving Mars. Another game that combines the principles of urban planning and survival on an alien planet. This time, players are encouraged to build their own colony on Mars. The main advantages of Surviving Mars are a deeply worked-out sci-fi setting, a rich option in terms of economics and construction, a set of unusual alien natural and climatic phenomena, a system of random events, a huge surface of the planet open for exploration with an unusual relief and a lot of secrets. Surviving Mars will feature an impressive technology tree, a catchy retro-futuristic style in the spirit of sci-fi from the 60s and, finally, the main feature, a unique system of colonists, each of whom will be a real person, with their own character, weaknesses and ambitions. Players will have to look for an occupation for each of them, based not only on abilities and skills, but also taking into account inclinations and interests. Banished. The game from the independent studio Shining Rock Software, warmly received by fans of urban planning and urban management, despite a very unusual, one might even say, risky concept at the time of release, the inclusion of a tangible element of survival in the gameplay. Today, Banished is rightfully included in the top city planning simulators, precisely because of its uniqueness. The main resource here is not wood, gold, oil or stone, but people. Outcasts who, after long wanderings, decided to settle on a wild land that has not yet been inhabited by anyone. Probably, it would be more correct to call Banished a simulator of the first settlers. The player will have to take care of the construction of the original rough and uncomfortable dwellings and the extraction of food, the establishment of trade with other settlements, the arrangement of arable fields and the distribution of occupations. At the same time, there are no strict classes and specializations in the game. Any action can be assigned to any inhabitant, provided that there are the necessary resources for this. The Settlers 7: Paths to a Kingdom. A wonderful game from Blue Byte, which combines elements of a city planning simulator and a military RTS and differs from all other games and are topped by a rather high level of difficulty. The Settlers 7 provides the player with the opportunity to grow from a small seedy village their own huge and powerful kingdom. Moreover, success can be achieved here in 3 different ways: military, commercial, or scientific. Each successful action in any of the chosen fields will bring special points, the number of which will determine the winner. At the same time, as already mentioned, the game is distinguished by a serious level of complexity, achieved due to the presence here of a dynamic, incredibly smart AI, which takes into account the player's actions and, depending on this, changes its own tactics. The game has multiplayer, which allows you to play online against another player, or together with him against the AI. I would like to note the excellent design and graphics of the Settlers 7, as well as the presence of a level editor that allows you to create your own maps. SimCity 2013. Naturally, EA was reluctant to write off a brand as famous as SimCity, even after Societies failed. Therefore, in 2013, the last attempt to date took place to return the king of city building simulators to its rightful place, except for Build It for smartphones. Over the years since the release of the game, many have already forgotten the hysteria that occurred due to problems with the servers. And, of course, the game only benefited from the time. And servers and their stability are indeed a critical part of the latest incarnation of SimCity. The whole core of the gameplay revolves around specializations for cities, which are now designed to coordinate with each other. For example, one settlement is engaged in garbage disposal, while neighbors finance such a landfill, earning money from tourism. At the same time, you can establish connections not only between your own cities, but also with the megacities of other players. This makes SimCity 2013 suitable even for playing with friends while planning a full ecosystem. In general, both the return to the foundations of SimCity 4 and the introduction of network features have benefited the successor of the series, making it fun and worthy of attention even today. Aven Colony. Perhaps one of the most unusual city building simulations on our list. The fact is that here you will have to equip a distant planet called Aven Prime, gradually transforming it from an unfamiliar and deadly edge at the other end of the universe into a cozy home for colonists from Earth. The game map Aven Colony is a huge open area, divided into a large number of different biomes, fraught with dozens of various surprises and dangers for the newly arrived colonists. Therefore, you will have to be very careful when choosing a site for construction. The strength and reliability of the erected settlements will be experienced not only by the local destructive climatic phenomena, like powerful thunderstorms and sandstorms, but also by representatives of the local megafauna, and even some of the most aggressive plant species. Also, the player will have to protect the colonists from unknown types of disease and hunger, fight crime, establish communication between the settlements, provide them with air, the local atmosphere is very poor in oxygen, and electricity, monitor the morale and employment of their wards. In general, there will be a lot of things to do. But if successful, the reward will be appropriate, immeasurable gratitude and respect of the colonists, which will allow you to rise from the position of an ordinary governor of a colony to the post of president of a new galactic civilization. Tropico 5. The fifth part of a very unusual city planning simulator on PC, where the player will have to become the dictator of a tropical island for a long time and lead it through several eras, developing and rebuilding everything on it at his own discretion. In addition to ennobling and arranging the island's territory, players have access to many other areas of activity that determine the direction and pace of development of the subordinate state: trade, science, diplomacy, religion, culture, and so on. The game traditionally pleases with a wonderful graphic design, pleasant musical accompaniment in the Latin style, and a rich, interesting story campaign, divided into 15 episodes. In addition, for the first time in the Tropico series, a multiplayer mode appeared, allowing you to play online with a company of 2 to 4 people at the same time. Lethis, Path of Progress. Skyscrapers from the future and the present are certainly interesting, but city planning simulators are not limited to this. The rise of the indie industry has allowed the genre to move further, far beyond the usual settings. For example, the authors of Lethis, Path of Progress brought the action of their game into a steampunk world. In this world, a very valuable resource was discovered, in connection with which the player's state experienced an incredible economic growth. As you might guess, this growth will not only have to be tamed, but also directed in the right direction, building up 20 campaign missions with Victorian houses. Of course, the game's world isn't the only feature of Lethis' path of progress. All micromanagement is turned inside out. Are you accustomed to the fact that warehouses are the main ones, where all your production loads resources? Well, you can safely forget about this, because here all the services for the townspeople are looking for ways to their abodes. Both the road layout and direction signs are designed to regulate the flow of artists and bakers with rolls. The picture is completed by pleasant graphics and music, which create a true atmosphere of relaxation. Cities XL Platinum is another representative of the classic series of city building simulators. The time-tested formula of SimCity 4 is adjacent to what could later be seen in SimCity 2013. Namely, the division of cities into roles corresponding to each type of development. In addition, almost the entire planet is available for the construction of a settlement in Cities XL Platinum, which makes the landscapes more diverse. Tired of the familiar green background? Snowy Alps or hot desert sands await you. This brings much more variety to the routine life of virtual mayors. The technical part of the game is also pleasing. The picture is beautiful, the sounds are of high quality, the views of the cities are pleasing to the eye. But owners of weaker PCs should definitely think about purchasing Cities XL Platinum, because the project's optimization is not the best. City Life. 2008 construction simulator from Monte Cristo, with great detail and animation for its venerable age. It is very gratifying that the game, which is the perfect representative of the genre of city building simulators for weak PCs, is capable of showing such majestic and picturesque city panoramas. However, the wonderful visuals are far from the only plus of City Life. The classic mechanics of urban planning, where the player is invited to take care of a mediocre town and gradually turn it into a large prosperous metropolis, is successfully complemented by a deeply developed economic and social model. For example, in the game there are several different groups of the population, each with its own needs and socio-cultural characteristics, which must be taken into account in order not to provoke social conflicts that threaten to turn into a full-scale civil war. Pleasantly pleased with the very convenient construction tools, arranged according to the modular principle. It is distinguished by its ease of use, while providing great freedom for creativity in the implementation of the most daring and unexpected architectural and construction ideas. Grand Ages Rome. A game from Hemimont Games, released in 2009, and combines the features of not only a city planning simulator, but also a traditional real-time strategy, the setting of which is dedicated to the era of the Roman Empire. The player will have to build and develop cities, go on epic military campaigns, fight the tribes of barbarians, in general, do everything to ensure that the empire expands and flourishes. There are 2 single-player and 1 online modes in Grand Ages Rome. Mode Career will allow the player to go through 4 dozen exciting missions, including both construction and military operations, during which the player will be able to take control of 18 different types of combat units of the Roman army. The next mode, Free Play, allows you to develop your empire on one of the selected maps without any specific tasks. Finally, Multiplayer contains 6 additional modes with certain conditions, allowing you to test your skills as a city governor and commander in confrontation with other players. Caesar 4 is a city building simulator set in a not very familiar setting from the era of the Roman Empire. The problems then face the steward, on the whole similar to those encountered by the mayors of later times, building roads, establishing the supply of resources and ultimately getting a pleasant trickle from taxes coming to the treasury. It is true that you have to build and rebuild in this city planning simulator wisely and planning your actions in advance. If the lower and middle estates will somehow arrange the paved streets, then the upper society, which will bring the lion's share of taxes, is much more demanding of the beauty of the environment. Therefore, strategy in Caesar 4 is far from an empty word. All this makes the game, as expected, difficult, but also allows you to get a lot of pleasure from solving the assigned tasks. But what a modern gamer can evaporate pleasure is the technical execution of the project. And if the graphics are still bearable, then in the form of the Steam version, the game is one big problem. Therefore, by launching it, you will no longer be afraid of the intrigues of the grumbling Romans. Forest Village is dedicated to building and surviving in the Dark Middle Ages, with the developers from Mind Illusion trying to make the chosen setting as realistic as possible, both in terms of graphics and design, and in terms of gameplay. A huge selection of all kinds of buildings and improvements for them, many resources, an extensive system of crafts and various other activities for settlers, taking into account a dozen factors that affect the life of the settlement, and much more. The ability to terraform the landscape is important in the Forest Village. It can be used to prepare a site for the construction of new buildings, create a garden or arable field, lay a system of roads, and so on. Very convenient in the game is the review system, which allows you to inspect your possessions from a bird's eye view, or switch to a view from the eyes of any settler. And the last advantage of Forest Village is a system of events and an ever-changing ecosystem, which requires the player to be prepared for the inevitable emergence of new challenges, hunger, cold, drought, epidemic, fire, and so on. Northgard. A fascinating strategy about the Vikings who went in search of new lands and discovered the amazing Northgard, where they eventually decided to settle. The game is a fusion of traditional RTS with some elements that are not always characteristic of the genre. Important here is given, first of all, to the confident development of your settlement, as well as to survival and exploration of the surrounding world. Which, by the way, is based on Scandinavian mythology and has a light, but very expressive visual style. Of course, Northgard pays enough attention to such important aspects for any strategy as battles, with AI and other players, the development of new territories, trade and gaining new knowledge. Success in each of these areas brings its points, which are a condition for victory. In addition to the competitive mode against AI and other players, there is also a very interesting campaign here. Frostpunk. An icy hell descended on Britain, plunging all life into an eerie kingdom of cold and snow. It would seem that people have no chances of survival in such conditions, but the notorious human thirst for life here helped them to adapt. At a temperature of -100 degrees, they began to erect huge steam generators, serving as a source of heat and energy at the same time, and around them to build the rest of the buildings and all the accompanying infrastructure. Of course, survival in such a new world demanded from people radical changes in the worldview system and abandonment of many values and moral attitudes that had become irrelevant and even dangerous. And all these chores, economic, technological, legislative, moral, research, fall on the shoulders of the player. Thus, Frostpunk is not only an unusual city planning simulator with elements of survival, whose action takes place against the backdrop of gorgeous snow-covered landscapes and well-thought-out steampunk technologies, but also a rather deep social sandbox. However, serious moral overtones have become a kind of feature in games from 11-bit studios. Remember at least This War of Mine, an incredibly powerful survival simulator in terms of atmosphere and setting in a war. The only thing that can be blamed on Frostpunk is the short duration of the proposed scenarios. With a successful development of events, you can go through them in 2 days, no more. If your favorite game is not included in this list, write it in the comments. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel, activate notifications, press like, watch our other videos, and you will always be aware of what to play today.